had a comment from Geek Invasion, or a question. So, what is your guys' opinion on personhood? If we found intelligent alien life with a functioning civilization, what do we call them, as the word person is so limited?
Yeah.
Which is a good question.
Really interesting.
We've somewhat covered
question.
it in a previous show, one of the alien shows.
Yeah, very early on, actually.
A while ago.
One of the first episodes we did was about what impact would contact with aliens or detecting an alien civilization have on our society, and in that we sort of touched upon this, but it's a super interesting
there's more
question
to discuss that we haven't really covered before.
Yeah.
So I guess the first thing to think about is what that means now.
Yeah, well, I mean, now we have intuitions about it, don't we? It's really clear that we are all people and animals are all animals.
That's the dichotomy at the moment.
Yeah, it seems to be that you don't even really need to think about it. That's just the way it is, like there's people and animals, and that's reflected in our laws and everything.
Yeah, a monkey doesn't have to have a visa. Although having said that, there's some movements that want to kind of place personhood on like higher primates. Some, I think, even some cephalopods, like these types of things.
Yeah.
Basically, the more intelligent animals.
Yeah.
On the basis that they deserve the status of personhood as equally, as a person.
And I think some countries have actually gone as far as giving personhood to individual animals in some kind of weird gesture. Like I think New Zealand established personhood for like a single ape or something, single like Sumatran orangutan. I was reading about this.
Oh right, yeah.
Just a single one, like not the whole species, just one. And it was like granted personhood. But anyway, you're right that there are groups of people who, animal rights people who push for applying this umbrella term of personhood to other animals. Yeah. I don't know if that would necessarily change our intuition about it, though.
No, I don't think it would change the natural intuition. You could sort of train it out with people if you like a cultural. I mean,
maybe that will happen gradually anyway.
Yeah.
Over the next sort of 100 years, 200 years, I mean, Christ knows what's going to happen in 200 years. But if you imagine that, we'll continue along sort of a moral evolution that we've been undergoing for the last sort of several centuries. Sure. Then we might get to a point where animals, especially if we learn a lot more about the brain and about what the fundamental sort of neurological basis of consciousness and intelligence and all this stuff, it might not seem like such a hard distinction. Yeah. And even people's intuitions about it will change, just given like the right knowledge and stuff in the future. Yeah, I mean, see it more of a continuum rather than just like there's us and everything else.
So if we take that in the future, an alien lands, they jump out. The way they look is going to govern quite strongly how we initially think of them as a person or a non-person or whatever.
Yeah, massively.
So if it comes out and it's like a blob with tentacles and loads of like stingy bits and all sorts of like weird, it's kind of like just a horrible blob of horrible. You want to burn it. Yeah. Your first reaction is just to scream and run away.
Get the flamethrowers out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's really intelligent. It's got a little book and stuff. Or a worm, or it's something just totally not what we normally associate with something that has like personhood. Yeah,
it has no recognizable emotions or anything that we could even relate to in any way.
But it can. So let's just say in this situation, it can communicate with us. Then we would have it would take a while for us to ever get to the point where we consider it to be a person in terms of just kind of reactionary interactions with it. Yeah. You would always kind of be a bit, it's not really a person, whatever. You wouldn't would you go down the route of, it's as intelligent as us, just as equal as us, but it just looks different. Legally and like kind of internationally, how would the world be forced to kind of deal with this thing I think eventually, if it was intelligent, I think we would have to be rational about it. Would you call it a person, or would you giving it personhood doesn't necessarily mean it's a human? Sure, no. So, therefore, that's traditionally what it meant, but I think that it's separated from that, and it can be separated. Yeah, it is. It certainly seems it's going that way anyway. So you would give something that had. That recognizably, if it was, you could recognize kind of how it thinks and stuff, and you could communicate with it, and it had flown here on a spaceship and it was clearly advanced. Yeah, you would have to give it the same the same rights that humans enjoy in human society.
Yes.
Or at least that's what I think people would probably push for generally. If it's got recognizable.
If there's no other way of measuring it in terms of if we're not like really advanced in terms of our like neurological understanding of how brains work and all that stuff, and there's not some other way of sort of knowing placing them somehow on a continuum. Maybe even above us.
Well, let's say there's a little voice there's a translator, and we can talk. It's like a human speaking a different language, and we can translate between. And it's, it visibly has emotions, but it's kind of it's different emotions. Like it goes blue or red or green or whatever. It changes color instead of. We find it hard to identify with that, but fundamentally, if it's able to build things and it's advanced as we are, I think we'd probably end up we'd classify that as legally a person, even though it's
I think we would have to.
I don't think we'd have any other choice because we'd get into a war with them otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if they've flown all the way here, they could be super advanced, and that would not be good for us. Yeah. But also just, I think, just that recognition that they are, intelligent and as advanced, if not more advanced than us, would mean that we would have to be rational about it. Our empathy might tell us differently. We, as you were saying, we might find it really hard to empathize with some kind of weird squishy like blob of whatever.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to understand what it's suffering or what it's feeling or anything like that. But in terms of a legal system, I think we would have to just consider them legally as people.
I think that would be the general consensus.
Yeah.
It might not be the total consensus, but I think that would probably be the general consensus. There is maybe some caveats there and things, but what were you going to say?
I was going to say, what if we came across a civilization that was less advanced than us?
Well, so that's so if we take that scenario, but we've discovered it, we discover something that can build kind of mud hut type things on a planet that we visit.
But it's also still we totally.
But we can communicate with it.
Can communicate with it, but we can't. They're not like people. They're not. Sorry, they're not humans.
Yes.
Or humanoid.
Yes.
Again, they're just blobs or like
blob things.
Weird sort of hive mind swarms of bees or something. I don't know. Whatever.
Okay.
Just something a bit.
Hive mind of stuff.
Walking trees. I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
Just completely alien.
Non-humanoid at all.
Like an intelligent spider or something.
Okay.
Then
Spider planet.
but closer to what we might currently consider to be animals, because they seem to be less intelligent and less advanced than us.
But we're still recognizing they build some sort of civilization.
Some sort of civilization. So they're not
basics.
Yeah, they're more than monkeys.
Yeah.
A bit like maybe Neanderthals, kind of.
Okay, that's a good analogy.
Although sort of not that great, because they were actually humans. They were a species of
but
human.
that kind of
level of
I don't know. Neanderthals had like basic art and things.
Yeah,
and made pottery and bits and bobs. Didn't
they?
So,
they had fire and stuff. And
okay. So a Neanderthal type blob is what we're discussing. No, spider.
Yeah. There we go.
In that case, then you're. I mean. That's the gradational boundary point where it's there is no real hard cutoff between a human and animal. It's just that we've got to that point where we've jumped up in a step of evolution. We discussed this stuff at length. If you want to go back and look at previous episodes of the full shows, which are in a playlist on YouTube, and will be podcasts hopefully soon.
Yes, that is coming actually. By the way,
then what do we do then? We well obviously if they're building like a civilization type thing, then personally, I'd say we'd have to call them. They'd have to have personhood.
I would agree. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that's everyone's opinion.
But if you imagine, I can't actually think of a good sort of example scenario. But if you imagine some scenario in which deciding what to do in a legal sort of sense, so who to punish essentially in some kind of like situation,
right? And
it all comes down to the rights of the people. The rights of the human on the one side and the rights of the...
so picking one above the other.
Yeah.
Well, that probably ends up... So you shouldn't be able to separate... If they're legally a person, then you shouldn't be able to separate those two in court. So are you say...
Because there aren't... Yeah, you're right. There aren't different levels of personhood legally.
Is that right?
I don't think so. You have non-human animal rights, which are slightly better than just basic animal rights.
Oh, sorry, yes.
But when you get personhood, that's all the same.
I misunderstood what you said. Yeah. Sure.
So if we'd given them that legally,
then
these weird spider things, then that wouldn't be an issue.
No.
But say we hadn't. I don't know.
Are you saying say there's a moral conundrum where you've got to save a human or a spider person?
Yeah. Am I saying yeah?
Well, that would be how you view them, wouldn't it? That would be a good measure of how you view them as whether you view them as a person or something that's sort of on the edge of it. If you could make a decision between saving the human and saving the spider person, from a spider bus that's coming, okay, then you may. I mean, most people will probably say the human because that's part of their species. Not necessarily because they think the spider's worth less, just because it's a massive spider. Because it just, you can't identify with it. That reaction, that basic instinct to save your own species,
it's
to look
empathy,
after your own
isn't it?
species.
It's the fact that you can kind of run in your mind. You can run in your mind like a simulation of what it would be like to be that person about to die. But you can't do the same thing for the spider.
Yes.
So you feel that person's fear, but you don't feel the spider's fear.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what it's like to be the spider.
It's empathy. Yeah, and empathy's been developed, of course, to keep
empathy's really complex, super useful.
Yeah. A complex, intelligent society functioning without empathy,
but the
whole thing sort of falls apart a bit.
Yeah, but it does actually. It's potentially a hindrance in those kind of situations, because what's really important is just like how much something can suffer, right? In terms of weighing up what's important.
Okay, so let's say the spider thing is more intelligent than a human. Okay, so you are. It's like the superior species. Yeah. In every way, it's turned up here. It's got some ridiculous technology. It's giving us little tidbits of that technology to try and help lift us up and join its kind of spider galactic empire. Okay, right.
Yeah.
So in that situation.
So this is almost like the trolley problem scenario where there's like a train running down a track and it's going to kill one. You got to choose one or the other. Which one's going to die? Yeah. Okay. And you can empathise with the human and say the family of each one is observing as well, right? So you're going to cause, because obviously this is going to kill one or the other. Yeah. And on the one hand, you've got a human that you can empathise with and a human family that you can empathise with. On the other hand, you've got a more intelligent spider being that you can't empathise with, and its more intelligent family, which you can't empathise with. But they potentially have greater capacity to suffer because they're a higher level of like consciousness or intelligence or whatever.
The capacity to suffer is tricky because
what is
it's not like a more intelligent human suffers more than a less intelligent human, really, or it's not.
No, maybe intelligence is the wrong word, but maybe something like consciousness, whatever that is.
Well, we
have another episode on consciousness.
Yeah, we're running down a whole.
Yeah. But you'd be probably quite comfortable with the idea that you have more capacity to suffer than like a mouse.
I was about to say,
or an actual spider.
There are big jumps,
So say it's a jump like that.
Okay.
That they're that much higher. That we're mice and they're humans.
That's an interesting question though. Just on a little time, does a mouse have less capacity to suffer? It doesn't. I mean, it's stupid. It doesn't really know what the fuck's going on. It's just running around.
Maybe that on its own is enough because we are aware of.
It still feels pain and things.
Still feel pain, but it might not fully realise the consequences of that pain or
what's happening in the future or the past. That kind of. It probably does have those concepts, but not as we
like what it might be. If it's in pain and is about to die, it won't have the concept of what it's going to be leaving behind and hopes for the future that aren't ever going to be realised and all this stuff.
Just less complex, just a less complex reaction.
Less complex. But maybe capacity to suffer isn't a fair. I've been using it like it's some kind of like objective measure. But
we make that. Most people make the division between there are divisions that most people make. Even super hardcore vegan type people still disinfect tables before they eat or
kill bacteria by the billions.
There's still divisions they make.
Yeah.
So we're obviously all humans make some sort of, at some point there's a break off, whoever you are, of whether you're considering something more or less intelligent or whatever. So on that basis, we always make that moral judgment. So something that is more intelligent, that is more advanced, technically should have a higher sort of moral sort of personhood. It should
Yeah.
have not personhood, something even more.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. So
If it's only a bit more intelligent, say the spiders are all like sort of, they're all humans with an IQ of about 200, so they're just
Right.
like all of them are just like really really smart humans. Then I don't think that necessitates a real difference.
No.
But say they're just like totally different level, IQs is just
They're like
useless
super
anymore,
intelligent
because they're just
level.
passing every IQ test. It's not like the IQ test is not even worth looking at.
Just imagine these big spider things. Like,
Yeah. Then I mean they're probably going to be the ones making the judgments on.
Yeah, that's very true.
On
We're not
these
going
types of
to
things
have
anyway.
the
We
word,
just sit there and
we're
go,
not
all
saying it, yeah, we'll just have to get on with whatever they decide.
But back to your scenario with the train. So who do you save? So we decided most people would probably save in the first.
I would save the humans. Of course you would. Like you as a human would save the human. But I'm trying to say that maybe there's actually an argument that the rational thing to do would be to save the spider.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, just is more.
We make that distinction that there is a hierarchy in animals. I would save a human over a dog, so therefore I should save the spider over a human. Or is it just you are saving a human because that is your part of your species, and that's the hard and fast rule. Forget the intelligence, the whatever hierarchy of stuff. You should save the human because it's
yeah.
But that's like
is just an in-group out-group thinking essentially, but just taken to its extreme.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, taking a bizarre sort of scenario. But it's like, would you save someone you didn't know or a family member? You'd save a family member, kind of.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I don't know who the fuck this other person is.
Yeah. Is that a good analogy?
No, but that's just the in-group, out-group type.
It is. I'm just trying to think now. This is going to get maybe a bit... But like, say, saving a family member versus saving, like, 100 other people that you don't know. Because then you've got 100 times...
What are you talking about?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
This has all come from, would you consider aliens person? A person? Would they be called a person?
Yeah. Well, you'd that would be a very tricky... I don't
even want to... I don't want to know how I'm going to answer that question.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm just trying to work out if that's analogous to like a spider that's 100 times more intelligent than a human versus a human. Is that a similar question? But maybe it's not. Maybe it's much more complex than that.
I think it's a bit different.
Yeah.
So what are our views on that?
I don't know. I think ultimately, if we encountered a species that was similar to us in the sense that, you know, it's not just some kind of weird hive mind, sort of artificial super intelligence kind of strange thing.
Yeah,
as long as it's a kind of population of intelligent organisms in some way.
If we couldn't communicate with whatever this is, okay, it's some sort of like aloof. It's just not. It's disinterested in us, or it just can't communicate with us because it's. I don't know. It's just like Solaris. It's like a whole planet.
Yeah.
of consciousness that doesn't really understand what we are or anything like that. Take that scenario out, because obviously if we can't communicate with it, we can't write it into legal systems and whatever.
Yeah.
You
have to know.
We treat it like a national park or something. We just like stay away from it.
Yeah,
that would be it.
Yeah, like a dangerous.
It'd be an interesting scientific phenomenon that we kind of just ring fence.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be something we consider.
We could interact with in any way, really.
Yeah, so it'd have to be something we could interact with in some way.
Yeah.
I think under most scenarios, you end up sticking you consider them. You give them the status of personhood. They're not humans, but you give them the status of personhood because they are, roughly around. They're civilization building organisms. And those are the sorts of things you give. I would suggest.
I would agree.
Give personhood to.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree, and I think there is room in that for different levels on a continuum of intelligence or consciousness or whatever you want to call it, of like less advanced than us, less intelligent than us, and more intelligent than us. I think there's room for that to move around a bit, and we would still take that approach, especially as in the future, this isn't going to be happening tomorrow. It might happen tomorrow, but say our first contact isn't for another few centuries, our understanding of these things is probably going to be vastly different to what it is now, and the concept of thinking some kind of like weird blob of mucus as a person isn't going to be so strange to people.
No, because everyone's in a jar.
Well, so everyone's in a jar. Or do we just have like a fundamental understanding of the brain and
sure,
subjective experience and all that kind of shit.
I think within that, you said there's room for a lot of different stuff in there, and if there isn't room for it and it's like way more intelligent, we don't have to worry about it because they made that decision.
Yeah.
We have to be wondered if we can be considered whatever they call personhood, like their level.
We just got to hope that they've advanced to the point where they're
cool.
They're just benevolent towards us.
Yep.
And just chill. So thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, Geek Evasion.
And keep the comments coming.
Indeed.
That's what it's all about.